So welcome everybody to the last full day of Words and Music 2024. I'm really blessed to have amazing people in my life. And in 2018, when my organization, One Book One New Orleans, assumed directorship at this festival, a local poet came to me and said, I've always had a vision for a poetry reading series with po' boys, and we call it Po' Boys and Poets. And I said, cool, you want to curate that? And she said yes. And then the next year, in 2019, she said yes again. And it is now a beloved Words and Music Saturday tradition to come out, have some po' boys, and listen to some amazing poetry. And of course, the mastermind behind this beloved tradition is Stacey Balkun. Stacey. So before I bring Stacey up, I just wanted to thank you all for being here, number one. Number two, encourage you to buy books from Candace, our lovely bookseller. Candace has also been with us since 2018. So thank you for hanging in through the pandemic years, through multiple venue changes. We've been so happy to have you here. We've been on Bayou Road now, this is our second year in a row, and when we moved here, we had to not only love our bookseller, but also the city's oldest Black-owned bookstore, next door, Mama Vera. So how do we do that? How do we support two local bookstores at the same time? Because we can't have them up in here having competing tables. That would be weird for everybody. So, buy all the books from all the people you're going to see at Words and Music from Candace. And at every session, we're having a drawing for a $25 Community Book Center gift card. So you can go next door and buy different books. So I have this handy-dandy randomizer that randomly draws names from people who RSVP'd and bought tickets on Eventbrite. And our randomizer has chosen Susan Jane Apollo. Yeah. All right, Susan! Buy books and buy more books.
She was planning on going there.
Look at that. CL just asked us, how do we create beautiful community? And the reason is because book people are the best people. And one of those book people who is the best people is, of course, Stacey. Stacey is not only the curator of Po' Boys and Poets, she also has a PhD from University of Mississippi, Oxford, so she's Dr. Balkun. Someone call her a doctor. She is the author of Jackalope Girl Who Used to Speak, Lost City Museum, and the beautiful book Sweet Bitter. She's an amazing literary citizen, and I always end when I introduce Stacey with that E.B. White quote. Rarely does someone come along who is both a good friend and a good writer. And Stacey is both. Come on, Stacey.
Thank you to Megan and I wanted to tell a story about the origin of this series because it was a dream I had the first time I sat down at Busboys and Poets, a restaurant, bar, bookstore, and community space in Washington, D.C. Seem familiar? And it took its name from Langston Hughes, who worked as a busboy, incidentally Dr. Holt's favorite poet. So thank you all for being a part of this community that makes this happen. And I always think of the poem by Joy Harjo, Perhaps the World Ends Here, when we're gathered with books and food and poems. She writes, the world begins at a kitchen table. No matter what, we must eat to live. I think of this festival as that table, which she writes, has been a house in the rain, an umbrella in the sun. At this table, we sing with joy and sorrow. We pray of suffering and remorse. We give thanks. Joy Harjo. Please continue to eat, fill your plates for the whole reading, get up, sit down, whatever you need to do. Right now, please make sure your phones are all on silent. We're recording this, and we don't want that ringing to last forever and ever and ever. And remember the books, the books, the books. Support the poets, support the festival, support the bar. And I'll introduce each poet in my own way as they come up to stage, but you can read the full bios in the programs. Are we ready? Yeah, so storyteller, organizer, gender renegade, and agent of chaos, FreeQuency's anti-disciplinary revolutionary work unfolds in in-between spaces. They explore nuance, contradiction, intersections of living under racialized capitalism. FreeQuency has won the 2018 World Poetry Slam Championship and has had poetic work featured all over the globe, which is lucky for all of us because this is work that matters. They say, it is the artist's job to unearth stories that people try to bury with shovels of complacency and time in their TED Talk that almost didn't get released. Prepare to be unhurried. Please welcome FreeQuency.
I unfortunately don't know how to work a microphone. How y'all doing today? Good. Can you hear me? All right. My name is FreeQuency. It's good to see everybody. I have 3 pieces I'll share with you today. And these were written a couple of years ago, but I said that since it was election year, I would do this series of poems whenever I was able to get onto the mic. And this first one, there was these pack of stickers that I had made. I was supposed to be on tour in 2020, and so I was sitting there amongst all my merch, and we were all trying to like figure out what was going on in the world. And there are these moments where, you know, when I was before 2014 to about 2020, I spent a lot of time in the streets doing stuff with what came to be known as the movement for Black Lives. And then in 2020, I was having a bit of a moment where I wasn't sure how to show up because COVID was also happening, and we were just like, what is the state of the world, and how do we come together in these moments where we need to? And then, like, the universe tends to do this pack of stickers just like fell, and I was like, oh, okay, it's not just verse, there might be a poem here. And so I wrote this first piece called Poem as a Protest. 1. Protest is more than bodies on the street, picket signs in hand, more than chanting down Babylon on megaphones and setting cop cars, CVS's, and Wendy's on fire, though I should know. All of those things should continue, and then some. I've seen protests to be the ones who choose the kitchen as the front lines, the ones who know that humans will always hunger for more than justice, the ones who feed the centipede we become as our hundreds of feet march forward as one body in the streets. I know protests to be the teachers, the ones who never needed degrees or classrooms or textbooks to tell us our history. I also know it as those who told truths in the classrooms despite the spinelessness of the tattered textbooks they were given and the historians who whitewashed them. I believe protest is a name for those who petition other worlds on our behalf, the ones who prayed to ancestors to break chains we cannot see but have held us bound generationally. It is the ones who choose the old work and words to bring forth new worlds. It's the root workers and the conjurers, the witches and the witch doctors, the ones whose spells shroud us in a magic that too many of us were taught to fear or be ashamed of. Protest is the preachers who transmute the pulpit into the soapbox, the ones who are brave enough to name that the fire promised next time has been searing our skin for centuries, the ones who won't let you forget that Jesus was a table-flipping radical Negro, which is why he had to be resurrected in the first place. I know parenting must be protest. When 7-year-old girls are being swatted down on their grandmother's couches like pests, when 12-year-old boys are being slaughtered in the park for play, I've come to understand that all Black parents are Afrofuturists, that Black birth is proof we believe we win. We believe our children will exist in the future that we sometimes can't imagine, but we must keep fighting for. So I give thanks to the birthers and all those who labor to bring forth our kin, our nascent second string, our rituals of reinforcement. I give thanks to the babysitters and the aunties, the grandparents and the neighbors who might as well be family. Anyone who chooses to stay at home and protect our progeny for the day that they too will choose how and when to resist. Protest has always been the poet who remembers they are the poem. The one who remembers that every speaking can be a small spear, a spell, or a shovel. That every stanza can be a sword or a sheath. That every bar can be a brick or a bridge depending on how it needs to be used, too. All I know is freedom felt just as possible for me on the streets, when I was crossing police lines to break comrade free, or crossing on call nights to bring food to my friends and family. All I know is resistance wears many faces on our collective body. The most familiar is riot, the least familiar is strategy. All I know is we don't have to know how we will get free in order for us to start living and loving like we already are. As for me, I will turn my pen into a small sword, sharpen it with each stroke until each word stings like me. As for me, I will never stop speaking like I have swallowed a high pole, even if the truth stings and swells my own tongue. As for me, you will find me with my notebook and pen in one hand, a matchstick and a can of gasoline in the other, both always ready and willing to ignite. And so this next one that I'll share is actually not one that I wrote, but in order to get the one that I'll do, I kind of have to do this one. So in about 2015, before I really developed the language around that, I heard this piece called I Want a Night for President by Zoe Leonard. And it's a piece that was written in the early 90s when one of their friends who was elected was running for president, and they were trying to speak out to the Times and say how, folks who come from certain communities and identities are better placed to be in those positions of authority. And it was after, of course, the Obama years, and I came up during that time, that was the first election for me, and I was like, I get the gist of it, right? The idea of like people who come from certain communities knowing what's what, but there was something missing about like the root of the problem when I heard the piece. And so it took me a couple of years, and again, it wasn't until the 2020 election that I was just like, it's the whole thing that's kind of the issue, not necessarily who the president is. So this first piece by Zoe Leonard is called I Want a Night for President. I want a night for president. I want a person with AIDS for president, and I want a fag for vice president, and I want someone with no health insurance, and I want someone who grew up in a place where the earth is so saturated with toxic waste that they didn't have a choice about getting leukemia. I want a president that had an abortion at 16, and I want a candidate who isn't the lesser of two evils, and I want a president who lost their last lover to AIDS, who still sees that in their eyes every time they lay down to rest, who held their lover in their arms and they knew that they were dying. I want a president with no air conditioning, a president who stood in line in the clinic, at the DMV, at the welfare office, has been unemployed and laid off and sexually harassed and gay bashed and deported. I want someone who has spent the night in the tombs and had a cross burned on their lawn and survived rape. I want someone who has been in love and been hurt, who respects sex, who has made mistakes and learned from them. I want a black woman for president. I want someone with bad teeth and an attitude, someone who has eaten at nasty hospital, someone who cross-dresses and has done drugs and been in therapy. I want someone who's committed civil disobedience. And I want to know why this is impossible. I want to know why we started learning somewhere down the line that a president is always a clown, always a John and never a hooker, always a boss and never a worker, always a liar, always a thief and never calm. And that was written in the early 90s, right? And here we are. Say it again. A little louder. Yes, I'm so sorry. Is that okay?
Thank you.
I will be as loud as I can.
Thank you.
Okay. So yeah, I heard that piece in 2015, and like I said, I was like, yes, we're headed in, right back in the direction this poem was coming from. And then in 2020, this piece came to me. There was a campaign called 45 Lies, where they were asking people of the hip hop generation to like take a lie from Donald Trump and write a piece dispelling. And I was like, one, there was just so many, right? Like, where do you start? I spent the whole election just like figuring out what lie to do. But then about Angela Davis has a quote that says radical just means like getting to the root of something. And as I was trying to think about, again, this concept of a lie, I was like, well, the root is that the whole system is a lie, right? So how do you choose one lie from one president to speak to if the whole thing in itself is an untruth? And so this piece came out in response to this piece. So it's called 1 through 45 would lie. 46 through 100 will be no different. And it's after I Want a Night for President. Oh, silly humans, how quickly we forget. We who were once ruled by thrones of those who told us they were born to sit upon. We the descendants of those who overthrew dynasties and decapitated dictators. Who are we, in this moment, to not remember how much we've already overcome? How dare we dream so small? No, I don't want another 4 years of Trump. I don't want any Republican for president. But I don't want any Democrats either. No Democrats, no dykes, no people who've been unemployed. I don't want a black woman in office, not Oprah, Ava, or even Kamala. No immigrants in the Oval, I don't care how many or which drugs they've done. I don't want a president at all. After all, what is a president but a small king? An emperor whose new clothes I cannot see. An agreement we made collectively, we can unmake just as easily. I pledge no allegiance to America just because white men defiled it with borders and called the result a country. I do not confuse dying to vote with dying for freedom, even though they meant the same thing at one time in history. I will not beg for a seat at a table whose legs are bent backs and we dine only on scarcity. I want us to dare to dream beyond the dictates of this dystopia. To admit that too many have just noticed the ending we feared was coming came long ago and we have simply been living in its shadow. I want us to admit more than this being a failure from the start. To say that America never was great and it never can be. That sometimes the rock is so deep in the root that a pruning does not breed possibility. That any hope for a harvest lies in the fields that we sprouted from being raised and resown entirely. And I want to know why this is possible. I want to know why we started learning somewhere down the line that a president is always needed, that the police are always needed, that a country is always needed, that any of this has ever been and will always be needed. And I want to know how after slavery, genocide, colonialism, and all of the ways that they renamed the taking, how in the world did they convince us that they know how to run one better than we do? And I know it's sometimes hard to imagine that all of us can truly get free, but I need you to believe that we already are. I need you to believe that we always have been, no matter the master or the monarch, but only if we dare to dream beyond what we could see, only if we understood that reskinning or regendering the beast would never change the rumbling in its bellies. See, sometimes in a daydream, I will live to see the day a child is born so free, they will hear this poem and wonder what the hell a president even is. And I believe we can do it. And I accept we will be ourselves in the doing. I accept there will be disagreement, that we will conflict as we unravel our imposed inhumanity, as we realize we have less to learn than to unlearn in order to remember our collective body. And I want to know why this is impossible. I want to know why we started learning somewhere down the line that a president is always needed, that the police are always needed, that a country is always needed, that any of this has ever been and will always be needed. And I want to know how we were asked to write to one lie from one president in one poem when the sum of this country's presidencies is the untruth. 45 lies, yes, but so did 44, and so will 46, and so will our writing if we do not speak to the entirety of this. Oh, silly writers, how quickly we forget. We were once ruled by thrones and those who told us they were born to sit upon them. We the descendants of those who overthrew dynasties and decapitated dictators. Who are we, in this moment, to not remember how much we've already overcome? How dare we write so small? Thank you.
Up next, we have Maurice Carlos Ruffin, who is the author of national bestseller, The American Daughters, as well as The Ones Who Don't Say They Love You, which was the One New Orleans book of 2023. His debut novel, We Cast a Shadow, was a finalist for the PEN America Open Book Prize. All three books were New York Times Editor's Choice selections. Are you recognizing a pattern? Maurice is lauded for his fiction, as he should be, but he can actually write anything. Screenplays, articles on having hope even in this world, and even verse. Maurice is a professor at LSU, a stellar educator, boundlessly curious. He's the one you want to find at a party because he knows which snacks are best, and will find out where you can stash your jacket. He is one of the most thoughtful, reflective folks I've ever met, and a long-time supporter and friend of this festival that we all hold so dear in our hearts. And I am honored he was willing to share his poems with us today as part of this incredible lineup. So please welcome Maurice.
Stacey, that was a wonderful intro. I know what food is best. But my best advice for getting food in a restaurant is you ask for the off-menu stuff. Like ask the waiter like what the chef likes to make. So I'm in the main program, but I'm not on this thing. So I'm like an off-menu poet today. But actually, this may shock you, this is my first poetry reading ever. Like seriously. Yeah. Like, you know, I've read like my novels, I've read short pieces, short stories, I've read essays, but never actually read like just poetry. So there's no pressure except to say that like my boss Alex here is a poet. So yeah, let's just see how this goes. Which one to read first? So we did have an election. You may have noticed this. And I think it's normal in times of extreme change to have emotions. We have to keep our emotions in check. We have to understand that panic is not a response that can help anybody. If you love people, you have to take actions that help people. And so as somebody who's like an aspiring type poet, I've been learning different forms. So I learned about a form called epitaph, which is like super short. So this is one of those blink and you miss it poems. And I actually sent it off to the poet Ilya Kaminsky to get advice, like on stuff. So Ilya, so they changed the title. The title was Cap, like kids say, oh, no cap. Now the poet, not the title is Not So Fast. Blinking you miss is really short. Words on a page can do a great bit of good to reshape the world and make us what we should. Set the land aflame with your internal lighter. But alas, not every writer is a writer. I'm here all week. Whenever I travel, this is actually my last event of the year. I've been to Houston, DC, New York, I've been to Oregon this year. I've been to Alabama like 4 times, Mississippi like 3 times. This is a great place to end it. Whenever I'm traveling, I always like explain the music thing because in this place, music is so important. You know, that road outside, there was an article that says the oldest road in America or one of the oldest roads. That doesn't even do it any credit. They're like, oh, French settlers were here like in 1680. Let me tell you something. People were walking that road, you know, like 5,000 to 12,000 years ago. Because there was always water right there that brought you from the lake somewhere else. So we are part of a great list of movers and music makers. All right, there's a poet who I really appreciate. Her name is Natalie Shapiro. And she's the poet from whom I learned how to do voltas. You know, like you're going this way and you go that way. So here's a quick volta poem. This is called Soft Man, and it's after Natalie's Hard Child. I like short poems. I've always been a soft man, lowing with my brothers, who take the brightest born to serve in a menagerie of self-regard. I would save nothing of this world of wide, not beauty pageants, nor NFL football games, not big guns, or boys will be boys. I lament Atalanta, who was transformed into a lion for offending Zeus, a hurtful name, if ever one sat upon a mountain. I lament not because she was forced to pull a chariot, ox-like, with the man who roofied her, but because she had no sister in the telling to groom her tale and hear her roar. I'm so happy to read with other poets, and so proud to see FreeQuency, who's like one of my mentors as a poet. I've been watching FreeQuency for like 10 or 15 years now. And like to be in this space, of all spaces with you, it's an honor for me. Thank you for being here. I was telling FreeQuency before we got started that over the summer, I had a little accident. So my friend Charisma Price, who's a wonderful poet, professor at Tulane, has a little cousin who's like 8 years old. And he's like a male role model in his life. So he was having a birthday party. And they're like, you wanna go to the birthday party? Of course, my little man, I'll be there. So I showed up at the birthday party. The thing was, it was a skating party. And I'm not a great skater, but I said to text him, like, look, I would bust my behind for a small child. No big deal. I'm a terrible skater. But I went out there, I had a good time, and then I broke my leg. Yeah. And the hilarious thing about it is, like, there was a lady who was terrified. She was terrified of skating. And I'm like, come on, man, I'll show you how to do it. We had a good time. Like 45 minutes past, we were in the skating rink, you know, like a little floor. And there was some kid with a little like brackets to hold up like that. And he had run into me earlier, I caught him, you know? I'm like, you're okay, kid, keep on going. At the end of the 45 minutes, he hit me from behind, sideways, and just like spaghetti, it just went wrong. It was like, so I had surgery. But I'm standing here before you. I can't quite tap dance yet. All right. So I'm bringing that up because I used to have a very good friend who I would go jogging in Auburn Park with. And I'm thinking about the idea of these little moments of somebody caring for you that you don't expect. She was a better runner. Like she wouldn't get hot or exhausted. I'd be like afraid of passing out. So I'll play this. I used to be much faster. Damn the sun. Let's just go, my friend D said. So we sprinted, the sweat-soaked air pressing our skin as if a rag in our mother's hand. This heart hammers, this heart made to collapse. All I want is to lie like the grasses, but she embraces me with her eyes, arms pumping. I won't let anything happen to you. Love comes in unexpected pairs. I'm a head and a half taller. Her hair flows along both sides of her shoulders, parentheses, pantheress. I am hairless and large, a whale reaching the surface, fins flipping, fat and light on his feet. Another one off. I've known what it means to swim in shame, to lower my lashes at words placed on the crest of my belly. What is flesh but our ancestors? Rising from the surface of our skin. My family is built low and wide, the better to submerge. But they made me this floating creature, reaching the blue. I have swum so fast, fins peeling, that I smelled the pepper of my elders' clap from wide, low savannas. I believe my eyes were black until I saw the sun in my reflection. A panther can run as fast as she pleases. I only crave the depths. Do a couple more here. We actually had a schedule, Stacey. Nice work. I'm very impressed. So the new Kendrick album's out right now. New Kendrick tomorrow. Luther Vandross song. Often like count down how many poems are left so you would know what to expect. You go like get mad, so you up here forever. So I think 3 more poems, I'm out. I shall not darken your doorsteps again. So yeah, election, you know, pandemic, great reception. Great Recession, stressful times. I'm kind of exhausted, and I'm never exhausted. So I wrote a poem called Exhaustion. And I showed it to Yo-Yo Kaminsky, he said it's too long. You get exhausted. I mean, Yo-Yo, you're out there somewhere, I love you. All right, this is Exhaustion. My long nose hangs over the footboard. My feathers sparkle with moon dust. No, mold. A body is not a cage because it won't move. A body loses worth because you won't move. Spigot drips twice a minute, water returning to the throat where mysteries belong. These plates of gold, once my armor, now my sarcophagus. Prop my old body up in a schoolhouse and dress me well, a lesson to the youth that can't be taught. I like stamps. It's really nice. You know, when you read fiction, nobody stamps in fiction, so I feel very, what was the other talk about? Let's I'll do like two more and we'll call it quits. Okay, so the first poem I had published was, well, I often say this to people when I'm reading, I say, you know, some of y'all have like mama issues, some of y'all got daddy issues, but actually you all have both. So you got both issues. So this poem is actually about all my ancestors in one. I gotta get it out. Oh, I'll be remiss to not mention, so I have books. I say aspiring poet because I don't have any poetry books yet, but I do have fictional books. And I know Candace, my good pal back there, hey Candace, how you doing? Candace has a bunch of them, so if you're interested in the books that I have written, I have, Jose, what's the first book? You have the first book open? See your bag over there?
The hardcover version.
The hardcover version. Let's see, it's like a snakeskin cover. It's very unique. They have that one.
Cast a shadow.
We Cast a Shadow. It actually glows in the dark. It's a very unusual cover. Yeah.
Glows in the dark.
My first book is a dystopian satire about like how America can be really sucky sometimes if we allow it to be sucky with the fight back. So this is the same book that the cover, We Cast a Shadow. My second book is Love Letter to New Orleans. It's 19 short stories. And this is the cover. It's called The Ones Who Say They Love You. I know that Candace has some of these as well. And my most recent book is called The American Daughters, which is about these two girls in the 1840s who joined a spy ring to just kill off Confederates. It's called The American Daughters. And so this is the British cover with the sort of Monty Python-ish collage type cover right there. All right, I'll read this. After my dad died, I bore his body from room to room. The cancer had flayed his flesh. I was shocked by his heaviness. His body pulled the cords of my back to their conclusions. He put a violin in my hands when I was small. And once I turned the peg as the note rose higher and higher, until the E string snapped against my arm, a caterpillar-shaped welt rising. 2. I refused my father just once. He asked me to give him the pack of cigarettes. Grandmother has already had a heart attack, alone in the night. Arteries hardened by Philip Morris. A surgeon slices my mother's breast to save her from cells gone to riot, chewing their way out of her body. I say, oh, I'll do this for you, but once. Love is. 3. Mama cries for years after his death. His leaving ends our circling. Don't you miss him, son? The green wedge of a sailor's pack winks from her lap. After I fill my car's tank, the needle rises from E to F. Every cell of mama's body balloon filled with heavy water. In my daydreams, she inhales. Smoke nettles her lungs and calls his true name. 0. 1982. I'm 4. Dad takes the wheel of a pickup truck he borrowed without permission, reaches over to clip me in to the passenger seat, throws the transmission into drive, lights off down the ice-black rock road of Veterans Highway, watches my laughter at the witch's cackle of wind flowing through the cabin, misses his turn at Lafayette Park, turns too fast, spins us at the intersection, 2 infants on the back of a mermaid, the fishtail whipping in the drizzle-made ponds, he reaching over to pin me in place as I think this will always be. I should be well left alone. I got one more poem. I promise FreeQuency is the last one. I was inspired by the poet laureate Ada Limon. She was doing an interview somewhere, and I was trying to get started like writing poems consistently a couple of years ago. And she's like, she read this poem like, oh, that's a poem right there. Like I can't write that. I can write something, towards that. So this was my second published poem. It's in Diode magazine online, and I'm trying to think of a decent intro for this one. Oh, I know. Nice little saxophone. I'm out of your hair. This is called Spring Everywhere Else. After Ada Limon, the poet laureate of the United States. Although I agree, we don't need any countries. FreeQuency. We don't need any countries. All right. Also, last thing, I had like a numbering thing happen in this period, I can tell. Okay, 1. My family is swimming in children. During holiday visits, my parents dump me into the play place of my cousins, where we talk and tumble over one another, a bucket of pond frogs. The pleasure of family is your nose, your eyes, your land, echoing off the ceilings and window panes. Adults come to the door to check in. They look down on us like uncertain chefs, trying to decide the meal is going to turn out okay. And if it doesn't, whether it's their fault. 2. All my animals were bachelors. In my life, I had 2 parakeets in 2 months, but never at the same time. They all wind up in the backyard. The same soil where my friends and I shoot magic at each other and say, haha, you missed. I see a mama feline pick up a kitten by the scruff of its neck and wonder how is it that the little one is uninjured, but to be handled is to be injured. All those little kids just thin saucers in the soapy hands of others. 3. I'll never be a father. Despite my good height and strong jaw, my mild-mannered nature, or stockpile degrees, I'm tempted to pat myself on my artistic back and talk about choosing the path less followed. But this ain't heroic. It's simply a pat that I'm on. 4. Back when the circus had elephants, someone lifted me onto the gray skin of one with wet, dark eyes. They led us around in a velvet-covered ring. After the ride, I pushed my feet through the hay-covered ground and watched the magnificent creature wait for its next masters. If that elephant longed for its children, it didn't tell me. Thank you very much.
I love it. Maurice, everybody, our day is on. I guess continuing the book is Circle Back, which I brought to hold up and left on my table. An incredibly distinguished author. Adam's poems have appeared in Plowshares, Denver Quarterly, Iowa Review, and elsewhere. In 2018, aka the Before Times, he received a Literary Arts Fellowship from the Mississippi Arts Commission. I say this because the timeline matters. The poems in Circle Back are some of the first pandemic poems I've encountered that make me actually think and feel differently about what happened. Adam's poems are so subtle, so powerful, so full of realizations. Many of the pieces in Circle Back come as surprises for us readers, but also for the speaker, who just embraces their role as storyteller. In one poem about strangers no longer strangers, Adam writes, "I write them into this poem like it can change anything. Every muscle aches toward a word. I fall in love as the world turns to ruin. The world may keep trying to turn towards ruin, but we are here with Adam and all of this love. LSU is lucky to have Adam up in Baton Rouge now, where he is directing the creative writing program. Let's welcome Adam Clay."
Hey Stacey, that was so nice. It's great to be here. Thank you to Stacey and Megan for having us. It's amazing readers. It's great to hear your work. Maurice, you can write poems too. It's amazing. It's so great. That intro was great, Stacey. I think I kind of joke that I feel like I've always been a pandemic poet. You know, you read things I wrote before the pandemic, and it feels like they kind of have a pandemic feel to them. So I'm going to read 6 poems from the new book. These are my kids' first poetry reading, so we'll see how they do. Yes, we're going to try it. I go through these periods of writing where I try to sort of write a poem every day, sometimes for a month or 2 at a time. Over the course of 2 months during the pandemic, I wrote 60 poems using the title In a Silent Way, which is the name of the Miles Davis record. And I would listen to that album and try to finish the poem before the album was done. That was sort of working. So of those 60 poems, one of them made it into the book. So, In a Silent Way. The wounded deer died in the impossible garden. Did it become the orchid that shouldn't be there, the cactus thriving in a rain puddle? The trestle bridge carries more weight than my body, but the heft of a memory changes all things. I look between the cracks in words for a place that will hold water, a place sand can fill in with temporary glass. An owl I love for its elusiveness, as if it was always there in the tree, so still its falsity eclipses the call. The world isn't prone to forgive imagined thought, but eventually all light decides to acquiesce. I turn aspirations into driftwood and sandstone. The wounded deer dies in the impossible garden, but a word made it resurrect itself into perfectly honed light. What reflects the self back to the self isn't eternal or finite ending. I left the flower that made me think of you for another day. It's still deep in the woods of my memory, holding the world in place. Is Benji pulling me during that poem? Blessedness is ours. This poem uses some lines from Darwish in it. Picking myself up from bed and into news of last night's noise from the loop of those rootless trees, I find a thread of promise in the words of Darwish, something to bring less helplessness. Almond trees have illuminated the footprints of passerby. 4 egrets align in the mind, and this vision burns so clear it cannot be a memory of the border of a siege, or even a siege itself. What does it mean to drift free of thought or within a thought? Inconsequent currents, sensory, and the desire to feel tells us less of the magnitude and more about the risk of water without land, or an ocean slight enough to mirror the sky's shallow ridge. When thoughts arrive, they seem pristine on the face, or as if swift means certain. On second or third thought, they are more like what a silo holds. Layers upon layers of history and danger in the way of resistance toward a simple way of thinking. Describe the light of early morning as a bruise. No need to. The day mirrors without us, lifting up and out like a spruce. Strange animal facts. I read about a species of ant that crawls into electronics to feed on the wiring and ultimately electrocutes itself. Upon dying, the ant releases a chemical calling other ants to avenge its death. I shake my phone in the early mornings to wake up alongside me. I walk through the hallway of my house and think nothing of the mechanics of my body. I started crying yesterday because of a single note in a song that was mostly unremarkable up until that moment. Later, I poured myself down the drain with the water I take every night habitually and ritually to place on the nightstand I never drink. I divide the day up into parts that make sense, but it's all meaningless to the trees growing always for a life beyond my own. I sleep under a blanket that resists the movement of my body. I arrange my day around the unnecessary and the good. On the day when no one was born, smoke rolls through the voices singing happy birthday to you, but it's not your birthday or a day for any birth really. Where will regret go at the end of the story? It is only a piece of the puzzle we'll call your life. Always we find new ways to be troubled, but there might be a rough circling to the self reflected in the eye of the other self you lost. This state is strange, and this state of being is stranger. But eventually it will be your birthday, and what will you say to the singing, to the cake lowered slowly from a helicopter? Nothing's random. Unending like a salmon swimming off. Okay, this is your 2-poem warning. It's always good to know what you have coming. I was at a reading one time and the poet said, I'm going to read one poem, and we're all kind of like, okay, sounds good. And then he said it's in 22 parts. And it was the kind of thing where he read the first part and it was so long that when he said 2, we were kind of like, had forgotten. It was like a 3-hour reading. I won't tell you who it was. You can maybe guess. I won't do that to you. This is a poem called Darkling I Listen, which is the line from Keats's Ode to a Nightingale, a poem that I read in graduate school and a professor lectured on one day. And so the poem is kind of thinking about that. This actually is in the anthology Leave It Alone, published last year. So I discovered, I saw my wife this the other day, there's a man on YouTube, his site is called like Poetry and Dogs. And he memorizes poems and then recites them like in a park with his dogs. And he memorized this poem and it was like really lovely to see him reading my poems. Check it out. Darkling I Listen. A professor once mentioned as an aside that there are lines in Ode to a Nightingale written to mimic the bird's call. Maybe he was right, or maybe he wasn't. Either way, the class spent a stretch looking, listening, mouthing the stressed and unstressed words on the page. On Keats's poem, a critic writes that lyric is thus a mode that simultaneously erases and expresses selfhood. I think of an eraser and a pencil working alongside each other. Part of me can't help but think Keats called the birdsong immortal because of his poem, and not the romantic idea that nature, through its cycles and turns, will ebb and flow forever. Sometimes the ego's optimism remains beautiful even when it's utterly and completely flawed. I'd rather think of Keats sketching himself back into place. On the golden record that's out of the solar system now, scientists deem the sound of birds important enough to include as a marker of our planet. Listening this morning to a clip of what someone or something might hear one day I can't help but wonder if they'll even know what it is. Maybe they'll think it was the language we spoke to one another, to say what we longed for, the language we used to say, one day when I'm gone, and you're out among the trees. Please, please, remember me. This poem is called Eternal Things. It's the poem that Stacey quoted in the intro, and so I'll close with this poem. A poem, I think this book, I wrote this book during the pandemic, and a lot of the poems, I think, directly get at it, but I think too, like, I don't know, for me, like, writing it during the pandemic was hard. I think a lot of writers were like, it's gonna be great, I'm gonna have all this time. And it just kind of like, I just couldn't write. I couldn't watch movies, I couldn't read books. And what's so weird about it for me, I think, is that writing poems is a way of documenting life and memory and the things that we've experienced. And so, as I was finishing this book, I wrote this poem, Eternal Things, which kind of brings in a lot of different ideas and thoughts and things from memory that I didn't want to go away, that I wanted to keep in place. Eternal Things. Thank you again for being here on this beautiful day. Eternal Things. I realized I never wrote a poem about Italy. My daughter rock hounding with a Russian woman who didn't speak English. Dreamt of eating mussels every night. Sea tomatoes in a cave, a missed reservation. I realized I never wrote a poem about a lot of things. The world is ending and we're priced out of what we do. A cloud this morning nearly knocked me down. In 2020, I mostly stopped reading. When routines become abandoned, a train continually cuts this town in half. What side will you be on? Penny and I drove to Santa Fe. Sunflowers stretched their petals 360 degrees. The sun was everywhere. I felt my skin burning on a short walk around the block. An elegy can be anything. An elegy can be a soup recipe. Matthias and I sat on the front porch in April that year and watched the sky split in half. Poets and crossword puzzles like skulls on the mantle. I apologize for the state I live in. I take communion. It brings Kathy to tears. Tears is a word I usually don't use in poems. I stumble over what should be simple. Everything can be misread. I don't want to forget the woman on the plane whose son died 3 weeks before. He went for a walk and didn't come back. I write them into this poem like it can change anything. Every muscle aches toward a word. I fall in love as the world turns to ruin.
Thank you, Adam. An elegy can be anything. Circle back at the book tent. The bamboo wife at the book table. Yes, y'all, I am so glad Leona Sevick is here in New Orleans with us today. Leona is the author of The Bamboo Wife, which just came out 2024, and Lion Brothers, which won the Press 53 Poetry Award. You can find her poems in some of my favorite journals like Blackbird, Orion, and the Southern Review. And in 2018, Leona was a Tennessee Williams Scholar, New Orleans Connection, and a 2019 Fellow at the Sewanee Writers Conference. She serves as advisory board member of the Furious Flower Black Poetry Center, which is a stellar organization. Leona is provost and professor of English at Bridgewater College in Virginia, where she teaches Asian American Lit. She is a long-time supporter of one of my favorite things, the Longleaf Writers Conference, which is where we met in 2018. At last year's conference, we worked together on new poems, and despite our years of friendship, I was still blown away by her capacity for empathy, her intentionality with language, her ability to let go when the ocean takes away our most precious possessions. I've learned so much from her writing. Her poem, Ivy in the House, describes its subject as a bright, wild thing, unwilling to be mastered, refusing to submit to the world, which is an apt description of her spirit. Please welcome Leona Sevick.
Stacey, that's so kind. A little height challenge, so how's that? Sounds okay? Great. I'm batting cleanup after those wonderful poets. Thank you. So, The Bamboo Wife takes as its title an object. My mother was South Korean, and as a family we traveled to South Korea. It was my first visit there in 2015, and I was inspired by many things on that visit. And so I will read, and you can learn what the object is from the book. The Bamboo Wife. If one bright day you find yourself moving through the rooms of the Jeju Folklore Museum, you might pause at the domestic exhibits, wonder at the strange closed basket as wide as a drum and as long as a yardstick. They call it Bamboo Wife, and carefully printed signs tell you that in warmer months, men would wrap their arms and legs around her cage body to sleep. Her ribs free from flesh, the air moving through her to cool the sleeper. Perhaps you think this is a strange marriage. The wife stiff and silent, her spouse breathing into her his stale, sour air, arms locked in a tight embrace around nothing. Where has she gone, living wife? Out to the paddy field in search of a soft breeze, the cold water cupping her feet as she reaches for the sky. So my father died 9 months ago, and I've been thinking about all of the poems that are in this book that are inspired by him. He was a retired state trooper. He was a Maryland state trooper. He was very proud of being a police officer. He guarded one very famous person, and that's what this poem is about. This poem is Guarding George Wallace. One May day in 1972, Arthur Bremer shot Wallace 5 times, a bullet lodging in his spine in such a way he'd never walk again. We know that Bremer was crazy, not a martyr for good. Here is madness, where we crave reason, bald desire for fame, where we prefer conviction. My father, 25 and gentle still, stood with his straight back to the door of Wallace's hospital room, gun at his hip and shoes polished to a high shine. He would have laid down his life for an unworthy man. Who among us chooses who we care for, who we serve? I have forgiven him nearly everything. I didn't tell you how many poems I'm going to read. It's probably going to be 6. I told my son, who's here, that I was only going to read one son poem. So this is it. Kids just love when you read poems about them. Just love it. Especially when they're young adults. This one's called Dilettante. It's really not that bad. The dark, this walk home, longer than you want it to be. Your fingers folded into pockets where they fight November cold, where they hide from the moon's sharp, slivered eye. Whatever you've been up to, whatever kept you at the office so late, doesn't matter now. That sound coming from over the ridge is the pop of aluminum against a hard leather wall.
and it takes you back to a time when all you wanted was to sit your ass on the cold metal bleachers and watch your boy play baseball. How you loved everything about it, because he loved everything about it. Even in that hopeless season when they were 0 for 7 and fall ball stretched its stiff neck into winter. You propped elbows on knees and chin on hands for so long you couldn't feel anything anymore. Lips thin with concentration, frame vibrating with potential, your boy stepped up to the plate and pawed the dirt like a pony, held the like a pro. You held your breath, felt your thumping heart say, good eye, good eye. No matter what happened next, the sun would come up as it did tomorrow. You'll pay your bills, throw a load into the washer, settle into your life, pretending those point shoes, that sonata, wouldn't have led to anything anyway. Aim toward home and a sink full of dishes, you bend to the wind, walk on. So on my trip to South Korea, we went to a very interesting place. If you've ever been to Korea, if you know anything about Korean culture, there are these statues there. I'm making this motion like they're small, they're giant statues. And they're called harubangs. And here's something that appears in this poem, Stone Grandfather. And there you sit, your basalt belly swollen heavy, a gentle smile playing at your stone lips. To say I sought you out would be a bald-faced lie, but I will admit that seeing you standing there all alone on Hapje Beach, the long tide pulling at the sand around you, gave me pause. Towering, ominous, and amused, your bulging eyes the diameter of cymbals, you wait patiently for me to speak, an outdoor priest in his open-air confessional. Beckoning with giant fingers, you intimate I should kneel at the idea of your feet. Tell me your troubles. When I was a child, my grandmother, Halmoni, urged me to pray to Harapati, ask the grandfather for his forgiveness for every sin in my child's heart. I've since forgiven her this small cruelty. In this strange place, newlyweds buy their own harubangs, mock believe you'll ensure fertility in their bright futures. Trust me when I say that's not what I'm after. I've had, in fact, lifetimes of that. What I need can't be found in travel brochures or on the strangely worded plaques that appear with you on this honeymoon island. I need the old beliefs, the ones the fishermen and sailors clung to years ago. No matter what they had done or who they had injured, you looked at them with eyes that said, beloved, said, you are worthy of my love, of others' love. I can see you. We have two just very short poems left. I am a lover of dogs. I'm gonna have to check out the poetry in dogs. I love dogs. And I'm sorry, we're cat people out there. I've never been a big fan of cats, but I know that people love them. I certainly understand why. This poem is called Grief Cat. Circling the edges of these rooms, he rubs the sides of his belly, his fisted face on every vertical plane, each wall and table leg, each stair spindle, pretending not to see me. Just when I forget to look for him, when the folds of my brain are fat with work, or I think I'm too tired to dream, Grief Cat pounces from an unseen height, or springs from a space too small to hold him. At the bottom of my closet, he finds the shoes I bought her, the ones I took back. Curling heavy on my chest while I'm sleeping, Grief Cat watches me stare into this mirror, see the curves of her face and lines burrowing deeper. Stretching long on the couch, flicking his tail, he studies me with dark orbs that see all I've lost. Relentless, shifty, if he moves, I'll never see him coming. My last poem, this was born out of the pandemic as well. During the pandemic, I took up gravel riding on a bicycle. And I hadn't ridden a bicycle since I was a child. And so I would ride through the national forest in Virginia, and I started thinking a lot about trees. I never think about trees, really. And I thought about a particular kind of tree. Ghost trees. They're also called albino redwoods. The heartless, the myopic, call us vampires, parasites, though we are neither of these. It is true we cannot feed ourselves, cannot make our food from light alone. We need the others. Large stomata in our leaves, an anomaly, send water into the air, an endless crying jag. Our roots feed from the ground, absorb all the metals, all the poisons. Yes, we've been ridiculed. We've been doubted and blamed. And if you spot us shimmering incandescent in the canopy, you'll think us a trick of light, an impossibility. We are rare, and docents hide us to keep us safe. Unlike animals, we cannot run. We are poets, and we are sometimes loved to death. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Let's give it up one more time for all of our poets. And for our venue, and we are in this beautiful space, and up next at 2 p.m. is How Women Made Music. It'll be in the theater stage, so stick around. Otherwise, we will all be here. Feel free to applaud our poets. Any other announcements, Megan, I can make?
I am going to speak for all the poets when I say that if you get their books, they'll be happy to sign them.